I'm Realtor Deb Tomorrow, and this is At Home in Bloomington, brought to you by Karen Russell, Ruoff Home Mortgage. We profile the people, places, and resources that make Bloomington, Bloomington, and help you live your best life. At Home in Bloomington. Hello, and welcome to another episode of At Home in Bloomington. I am your host, Realtor Deb Tomorrow, as usual, joined by... I need a button to push that has like the legions of fans that cheer.
Yeah, after
when I you announce my name.
Yes, you should.
That probably would go to my head though.
That's all right.
Yeah. So the other voice you hear is my lovely co-host, Ms. Karen Russell, who's the best name lender in the state of Indiana, Ruoff Home Mortgage.
Hello,
welcome. So usually, for regular listeners of the show, first of all, thank you for being a regular listener. But if you're a regular listener, you know that we typically play a game of Karen doesn't know who the guest is until we start the show. She's sitting in front of a person or two, and she has no idea who they are or what they do, and she's completely unprepared. This time, I actually confess, I told her a couple days ago, I said, I'm just going to tell you who the guest is because you know him. And that would be silly because
I was like, are you sure you want to tell me? And you're like, yes, you're going to know exactly who it is when they walk in the door.
Yeah, so there's no point in that. So to no further ado, our guest today is Loren Wood of Loren Wood Builders and so much more. I'm going to add that to the name of your company, Loren Wood Builders and so much more.
Thank you.
That? So welcome. We have had you on a guest on our old show, Real Estate Today, a few times. So I'm going to refer back to some of those shows a little bit and put links in so people can find those shows. But we are here today primarily to talk about the co-housing project that's going on in Bloomington. Does it have a formal name other than the co-housing project?
Bloomington Cohousing Project.
Is there going to be a neighborhood name, or is it just going to be...
Probably just.
Could we have a contest?
Yes.
Oh, I like to come up with names.
Something
like, with alliteration or onomatopoeia or one of those.
I would think that the people that are going to be living there would want to pick the name, don't you?
It's like the fish on the top of the
courthouse
that they just named Hoagie, to which I said, how did we know it's a boy fish? I take a little offense to that.
You could buy a lot and a house in there, and I would customize it for you, and you can spearhead the committee, the neighborhood naming committee.
Excellent marketing strategy, the naming committee. What do you do? I just name things. That's all I do. All right, so what is co-housing? Because I know there are tons of misconceptions, and I really want people to listen to this show and clear up some of those misconceptions. I even see, realtors calling it the co-op project, and I think it's just nobody's really understanding. Not nobody, but sometimes I do. If I can do so without being snarky, because I don't want to be a snarky realtor.
Well, you don't have to, but I think, snarky can help whenever they're misrepresenting the project. So.
Right.
Yeah, I'll do my best, but I think that probably people walk away from this show and say, I just heard a show on the co-op community.
Still going to call it. Maybe our name should be co-housing, not co-op.
Yeah.
There you go. See, there's a name in there somewhere.
I don't know that it's particularly different. But in any event, co-housing is a very broad term, and it refers to an intentional type of community that has some common features, inwardly focused towards some common ground, common yard, common house. If you think of a condo equivalent, like a clubhouse and some common spaces like a pool or something, ours has a bunch of common yard and some structures, a little shelter house in the middle and a fire pit and some paths through the property and a bunch of common gardens and a common house that'll have some gathering space upstairs and some shop and storage and multi-use space downstairs. We have a cabin on ours that includes 2 separate apartment spaces that'll be used for overflow space for people who have guests or family coming in from out of town if their houses aren't large enough to accommodate. In a nutshell, co-housing is a community that is designed intentionally to facilitate interaction with that community.
And I think that's the key. I remember from the previous show we did, the word intentional and encouraging a community. It's just a way of encouraging community. So we'll put up some of the drawings, and if you go to the Facebook page, Bloomington Cohousing Facebook page, they've got the plan, and all the houses are turned inward. And so it very much is, the thought of you walk out your front door and you see other people's front doors and you see people walking by, and you're just encouraged, but not required, right? And that's sort of
right.
key.
Yeah, and I when I said they're inwardly focused, it sounded like maybe they're turning a cold shoulder to the rest of the neighborhood. That's not the case. But I think if you picture, a urban neighborhood that's a bunch of houses facing a street, down, say, urban Indianapolis or Chicago or Bloomington, the
South Dunn Street,
Dunn Street neighborhood, just replace that street with a yard, and that's what it is. It's just creating a common space for people to interact with each other, and kids, dogs, and gardens, etc. That's not split by a street.
I think it's important too, if you do any Googling, you're going to see that there are all kinds of co-housing projects around the world. I know a little bit about the history because I've done some research on it, and it really kind of grew in Scandinavia, Denmark, in the 70s, and it's been over here for a little while, but I don't think there are any other co-housing projects in Indiana yet.
I know that there's some groups formed. They're trying to get to the point where we are, where they have land and are in a position to start building houses, but I don't believe that there are any other co-housing communities in Indiana.
Very big on the West Coast, very big in Colorado as well. And there's different sort of levels of this interaction. There are some that are like apartment buildings, and they will share meals, dinners. They will share responsibility for dinners, 3, 4, 5 times a week. And that's just sort of how this building, and there maybe are 8 units in the building. So it's a very small community. And that is a very different setup than what I think will probably happen in Bloomington.
Yeah. So a common meal is a common
theme
in co-housing. It's not a requirement. You don't have to eat with your neighbors. You don't, you don't have to make dinner for them. I think that co-housing communities are designed and developed for people for whom that activity holds some appeal. I think that if you're looking for a private wooded lot where you can't see your neighbors and they can't see you, this is probably not the neighborhood that would appeal to you, but no one has to eat dinner with anyone else. But a common meal in the common house, typically it seems like once a week in the communities that we visited and folks that we've talked with, seems to be about the norm, but some of them a lot more often, some less often, once a month. And not everyone attends every meal. I think just whoever signs up and goes in. But again, just that common meal is more a byproduct of just this attempt to develop and foster community within that little neighborhood. And Bloomington's core neighborhoods already have that picnics with the Bryan Park neighborhood or the near West Side neighborhood. So I would say that comparing it to the other neighborhood associations in Bloomington, that this is just maybe a little more focused, but just an extension of what you already see in little pocket communities.
Yeah. I know one of the things I ask people a lot when they're trying to describe to me what kind of home they want to buy or what location they want to live in is, how do you feel about saying hello to your neighbors every time you step outside? You let the dog outside, and some people are like, that's great, I love it. And I just had some clients a couple weeks ago, and she was looking at a house, and she goes, well, I miss seeing people walking by, like standing at my kitchen sink and seeing people walking their dogs down the street. Like that was a thing for her. But there are other people that are like, yeah, I don't really want to have that conversation. And so that I think this is a place for people who do want to have that conversation, like that idea.
Like you had mentioned, it may not be for everyone. And I'm thinking like my neighborhood, and I'm on that cul-de-sac. We have like 14 houses, I think, altogether, 13 houses. And when I see my neighbors, I'll say hello. But we come home and a lot of us go inside afterwards, and like that's it, And
that's one of the big things with this neighborhood is that it's, if you think about it, a lot of people live like you, Karen, where you actually pull into the driveway or pull into your garage, close the door, you never step outside. And so you never really have that conversation with the neighbors. So in the co-housing neighborhood, the garages are detached, and it encourages, you got to kind of walk to your house and
there's
see
this
people.
very American suburban sort of theme of you go home, you pull into your garage, and then you're in your castle, and you don't really interact with the folks around you. And I think that's fine for a lot of people. It's certainly fine, but I think co-housing was born out of and appeals to people who are looking for a little more connection with their community and the people around them. And I think it seems to appeal, maybe have a disproportionate appeal to people maybe in retirement age where they're no longer at work every day and maybe raising a family and have all these other points of community and connection with other people. But also there are quite a few, young families and young single and young professionals with no kids who have that same desire to just feel connected to the people around them and have a intentional built-in connectivity there. Anecdotally, my in-laws, my wife's parents bought the house next door to us, and I live out on a farm, and typically don't see anyone when I'm at home other than the animals, and we hike and stuff. It's so nice to let my kids walk next door and hang out at my in-laws' house when their cousins will be over there and they'll disappear, and we'll call, hey, Georgia,
have you seen our children yet?
It's so wonderful to have that right next door. And I think there was a time in America when that was more common for families to stay close and communities to be a little smaller, where people knew each other and spent more time at each other's houses. And we've just moved away from that. And I see the co-housing community as an intentional effort to recapture some of that tight little connected neighborhood feel that existed maybe somewhere, or maybe just in people's
maybe in our dreams or in a Disney movie.
There's a Facebook post out there that shows like all these bicycles like piled up in someone's front yard, and it says like this is where you knew where all the friends were in the neighborhood.
This is how you knew where all the kids were.
And I definitely miss that. I think the co-housing, and you have children, if you have children there, that'll give everyone this opportunity to be out in that common space. Because right now, like my 12-year-old is on Xbox with his friends in the neighborhood, but they're not out there interacting and really.
And I think as you're talking about that, I was thinking about my childhood, and I grew up on a little street in a little town in Danville, Illinois. Our neighbors. Our houses were really close together, and the neighbors, to my north, I guess, were a young couple with no kids, and there were 5 of us kids. I remember when we were young, we spent a lot of time over there. We in and out of their house. Next door to them, they were little kids. We were in and out of their house. And that little neighborhood feel. I mean, all the kids were in and out of each other's homes all the time, and it just. I think it was a neat way for kids to grow up. It was a neat way for adults to interact with each other in maybe something I don't see as much in Bloomington. I don't know if that has to do with the neighborhoods I've lived in and operated in. I mean, maybe that does exist in places in Bloomington, but it doesn't feel like it exists as much as it did.
Yeah, and I live out in the country like you, so it's like, I've spoken to my next door neighbor once. Seems like a nice guy. I've been there 13 years. Another interesting aspect is that this project has actually been around for quite some time. Can you speak just a little bit about how it started? And I definitely want to give recognition to the ladies who spearheaded it and kind of pushed it. Yeah,
so it was started, I don't know how many years ago. Marion Sinclair was the spearhead of that group that initially purchased this property and started the co-housing, our Bloomington Cohousing Community, along with Janet Greenblatt. And they, together with a couple of friends, had this burning desire to live in a co-housing community, and they sought out land and found this little plot that we are now developing, and purchased it and hired an architect, Mark Cornett, who had done similar types of projects and was philosophically aligned with what they were looking to do. And they managed to get through the plan unit development process, the PUD, and had approval to break ground and get going. And they just, from that point, and that must have been maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, I think they just never they did a lot of work there with that little group, but they just needed to get to the next level. They needed more people to bring in finances. And that just never.
The infrastructure is not cheap to kind of put together because you're having to run sewer lines and water lines, and because this is raw land, although it's located in town, but you're having to build streets and you're having to connect some streets that weren't connected before. So that's a big project for just a group of regular old people to take on.
It's expensive and it's difficult. Requires constant. I mean, I've got a project manager. They're running the infrastructure going in right now. He's there 8 hours a day. He's a construction professional, and and then we have our excavation team there. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around how some lay people would be able to just accomplish that by themselves. And typically they don't. I think they hire a general contracting firm like Loren Builders to execute. And anyway, fast forward to now, we're executing the next iteration of their initial dream and plan. In part, they acquired, after going through that initial PUD process, they acquired an additional piece of land that had been sort of an orphan property between what they had purchased in design and development on and the Montessori property to the west. And so acquiring that really rounded out that corner. Now the property consists of this entire dead-end piece of land with no other residential pieces to the east, west, or south. It's nestled in to the Y property, the Montessori school property, and this wooded nature or conservancy easement to the east. And so it's a really neat little...
And this is located, because I don't think we've said exactly where it's located. So I know it is the end of Maxwell Street, which is different than Maxwell Lane.
Right, they run different directions.
Yeah, they run different directions. And I had a friend who lived on Maxwell Street, and when I first went over to her house the first time, I was driving around Maxwell Lane going, where the hell's your house? And then she's like, it's street. So it's off of Hillside, Maxwell Street, and it's at the end of that. So it does back up to the Y and all of that stuff. And then you're connecting it with a little street called Short Street as well.
That's right.
So that's where it is. All right, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about how the community is going to look and how many homes there are and what the homes are going to be like and that kind of thing. So stick around. You're at home in Bloomington.
Hi, this is Karen Rastel with Ruoff Home Mortgage. Did you know there are down payment assistance programs for first-time buyers? A first-time buyer is defined as having no home ownership in the last 3 years. These income-based programs may help buyers with down payment or closing cost assistance. For additional details, contact me today at 812-606-7653. Ruoff Home Mortgage is an Indiana corporation licensed by the Indiana Department of Financial Institutions. This is not an offer for extension of credit or a commitment to lend. All loans must satisfy company underwriting guidelines. Equal housing lender. NMLS number 141868.
This is your Real Estate Realist. Practical advice on buying and selling real estate based on my experience closing over 800 home sales. I hope you're enjoying this episode of At Home in Bloomington with Loren Wood, who's talking about the new co-housing community that's coming to town. Loren was a guest on Real Estate Today a while back, and we talked even more about the idea of co-housing and its popularity around the world. Here are some notes from that show. Number 1, the goal of a co-housing neighborhood is to regain a sense of community. Number 2, how is the homeowner association different from a condo homeowner association? Well, the biggest difference is that there isn't a board that oversees the neighborhood and common areas. Decisions are made by all. That means that the population of the community is probably smaller to keep decision-making manageable, but that also consensus is vitally important. Many co-housing communities have pretty in-depth consensus policies. Number 3, what is co-housing not? A commune. A commune is a group of people living together and sharing possessions. In co-housing, you own your own home. You just share connections and social interaction to the extent that you are comfortable. And number 4, a co-housing community is also not a co-op. In co-op housing, you own a portion of a corporation and the corporation actually owns the real estate. Again, in co-housing, you own your own property just like with any other home. What's different is the sense of community and connections. Want to know more about co-housing? You can find out more on Real Estate Today podcast number 87. You can find it on iTunes, my YouTube channel, and at www.athomeinbloomington.com.
My name is Brittany, and Deb Tomorrow is my realtor. She helped me buy my first home. I enjoyed working with Deb because she was patient, thorough, and made the experience fun. Deb should be your realtor too. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to At Home in Bloomington. I'm your host, Realtor Deb Tomorrow, and we are joined by our sponsor, Karen Russell, and by Loren Wood of Loren Wood Builders, talking about the Bloomington Cohousing Project. But before we get back to that, I want to share our Facebook follow segment. And of course, I have no choice but to make our Facebook follow this week be Loren Wood Builders. Beyond just being the developer and the builder of the co-housing project, Loren's group does a ton of building and remodeling throughout the county. And I think pretty much at least once a week, there's a picture on Facebook that he'll post that I end up forwarding to Eurus. Like, we should do this. Like, that's really cool.
They're amazing pictures.
Yeah. I know one of the really interesting projects that you finished recently was the Hoosier Heights. Did I say that right? Yeah, the climbing gym. So you took the old McDowell Baptist Church and you converted that to a gym and built an additional building, and it's pretty amazing. I still need to go tour it because I saw it before.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but watching pictures like that, it just kind of makes you think, gosh, almost anything is possible. And you recently had a really interesting wall art, kind of tongue and groove wood on the wall kind of thing. Yeah. It was really, really, and that was one I sent to yours. I was like, we need to find a place to do this at our house. So, so follow them also on Instagram. And I'm not on the Instagram as much as I should be, but you guys do, I think, a good job with Instagram.
Yeah, I'd say that we we use Instagram a little more heavily than Facebook just for picture posting. But thank you so much for the plug there. I mean, we definitely have got a great, wonderful team. I can't take credit for
there's a bunch of
the work we do. They're good. Yeah. I love all you guys listening here and girls.
Hopefully they are listening.
But yeah, I've got a great team, and we get some opportunities to do some really neat stuff. So please check us out.
And I love that a lot of the theme of what you're doing is kind of converting existing stuff. You do new builds, but you do a lot of conversion, and some of it's really amazing. And I encourage people to drive by your office, which is where 446 and 3rd Street intersect right next to Brewster's. And that was an old like Jiffy Lube or something.
Mr. Luby,
There you go, Mr. Luby. And you wouldn't know it. I mean, it's just a really interesting, building and
even
structure.
the houses that get updated, but I mean, they're just, it's like a huge facelift. I don't even know how else to say it.
Well, I've done a lot of work with historic preservation and with Bloomington Restorations, and we always talk about, has this home been remodeled as opposed to remodeled? We have that term that we use, and that's when you can walk in and it just feels off because something's been added and the original plan and flow has just kind of gotten muddled up. And I think you guys do a good job of, we did a show, and we'll make sure people can find that show talking about the remodeling process. So anyways, we love Loren. There you go. You should too.
I'm kidding. That's fine.
You're like, we can just do the whole second segment like this, right? We'll just tell you how great you are.
That's really kind of you to say.
Awesome. All right. So let's get back to the Bloomington Cohousing Project. I want to talk about how many homes are going to be in the community. And I know some of the plans are still under development, right?
No, I mean, yes and no. The layout, the plat map is done. The homes have been designed and laid out and determined. There are 26 homes.
Okay.
There's one cabin that already exists that will be overflow space. I think I mentioned it in the first section. There's the common house, which will be a common, like a clubhouse gathering space for people to do yoga, music events, movie night, common meal if you want to come, potluck, yoga class, whatever. So
is the space going to be set, that space you're just describing, all those multiple purpose things? Is the space going to have like a kitchen? Or
yes, it'll be set up with a kitchen, no bedrooms, because the bedrooms will be in that cabin, which is right next door. And
it'll have a real home feel to it too, right? So it's going to be a kitchen and a dining room and a living room.
It'll look a little bit like a remodeled barn, but it'll be new construction. Yeah. Incidentally, we're an old barn on the property had set at one point. Okay. But there'll be 26 homes.
And size of those homes
will vary from the very smallest. Any of the homes could be one story to one story, 1.5, 2-story. You could do a basement under any of them, but the footprint of the smallest home is like 570 some square feet. But most likely someone would do a 2-story in that plan. So I'm guessing that the square footage will range from above ground 800 to 1,600 square feet, and then if someone did a basement, of course, maybe up to the low 2,000s. And then 5 of the homes have a garage.
Attached garage or detached?
Detached garage with the potential for an accessory dwelling unit above. So all of the garages were approved in the PUD for the potential for a accessory dwelling unit, which is defined in the Bloomington Building Code, granny flat, call it what you want. But it's a little apartment that could house someone full-time if you wanted, or rent it, whatever.
So the rest, if you don't have a garage, your parking is kind of on the periphery, but we're not talking like it's a mile hike or anything like that. No,
it's a very small little community, and so you would just, probably closer than if you lived in an apartment building and parked in the parking garage or
parking behind. Because if you remember, I thought that this was a good analogy of what it looks like if you took like the South Dunn Street project and you just took the road out and replaced it with grass, because they have alleys and people tend to park behind there, and so that's kind of the vibe. So and so are the housing floor plans, like you have some floor plans to choose from, but you said 26 homes, so there's 26 lots, but someone could come in and pick a lot and then pick a housing plan?
Yes. So the way that the lots, just due to the constraints of these smaller lot sizes, not every plan is feasible on every lot. Some of the plans are long, skinny. Some of them are square footprint. So we have a plat map or a site plan that shows, lot number 1 is possible with homes plans A, B, and E, etc. So you just look at the layout of the land and what lot sort of suits you, and then what plans are available on that lot, or vice versa.
And but people have they started picking out lots? Are you at that point yet?
We are at that point where people can be picking out lots. We were waiting to. We've not sold any lots. We've not had them open for sale. Partly we've been waiting to establish the cost of the infrastructure, and we're still the Short Street extension that you alluded to earlier that the city is requiring us to build is still in design and approval phase of the city, so we can't price that out and know how much that will cost. So that's really what's in flux right now, is not so much the home plans as much as the infrastructure cost, and trying to get that to stabilize before we know how much the lots cost.
So somebody could maybe reserve a lot or express interest and just kind of say, but once we have the final prices, then you can make a final determination.
I just don't want to sell anything before I know how much it costs.
And so if people are interested, what's the best way for them to find out more and get in touch with you? Or
through any number of avenues. You could go to the Bloomington Cohousing Facebook page and send a message there. You could go to the Loren Builders website, and there is a link to my direct email on the website, which is loren@lorenwoodbuilders.com. That's spelled LOREN. You can, my cell phone is right there on the website.
Okay, great.
And so is our office phone. Just Google Loren Wood Builders, you'll find us, and then shoot me an email.
Interesting. What about, one of the things I wanted to clear up, because I think it may be a misconception, is you actually do own the home and you own the lot as well.
Yeah, this is no different in structure than any other neighborhood with an HOA. You have a lot and a house that you own, and then there's this common space. Every HOA, or most HOAs, have an annual fee. This will have an HOA fee that goes to pay for the taxes and maintenance on the common ground, the common house, the common cabin, the lawns, and any sort of maintenance and upkeep.
Are all the yards included, or is every homeowner responsible for individual yard maintenance on their little lot?
On their little lot, but those lots are fairly contained, and one could, if they didn't want to do their own mowing, could maybe do some landscaping that was more of a no-mow approach. All of this is sort of in flux, but certainly they could also hire whoever mows the entire property to mow their or through some committee have a mowing rotation.
Yeah, I know one of the things that some of the co-housing communities do is they have shared yard tools and
Yes,
shared shed kind of
that'll
thing.
be a part of this. And that common house though is over a full basement that'll have shared tools, shared bike tools, storage, workshop space, mowers. So yeah, certainly that's part of the plan here.
Awesome. And I know we just said you don't know price points. Is there any kind of, affordable-ish? I mean, and I don't mean that in a condescending kind of way, but, some people you say affordable and they think 100,000, but in Bloomington being one of the more expensive housing markets in the state.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that the land cost and the infrastructure cost here is really what's driving ultimately the cost of the homes. I mean, they're small homes, and the level of finishes can certainly help the finished price go up or down. But the bottom line is that it's expensive land and it's expensive location and it's fairly costly to build out. That's just the reality of it. Probably it looks like the least expensive homes will start in the $250,000 range, and I think the range will probably go somewhere from $250,000 to $400,000, $450,000, depending on whether people go 2 full stories with the basement. And then, as a realtor, that the sky's the limit in terms of how much you can actually spend when you start finishing out a house. Right. But I expect the average cost to be somewhere, in the $250,000 to $350,000 range.
And those prices, to me, as a realtor, don't sound too far off from where South Dunn Street is.
No, or if you look at the Beeline station,
in
we're
that
very
area
much on par with those homes.
Yeah. And for reference, so the homes were designed by Mark Cornett, correct?
Yeah, Mark Cornett with the help of Ernesto Castaneda, who is our in-house architect, but also worked on the Dunn Street neighborhood and on the Beeline station, both with Mark.
So I think you'll see that there's sort of a similar vibe to it. I don't know if you're going to do all the different colors like South Dunn Street.
This is going to have a little bit of its own, its own vocabulary, but certainly there's some similarities in terms of the design style.
And we've mentioned this, and again, I want to mention it because, misconceptions. The homes, even though there's a common house with kitchen and you may share some common meals if you want to, the homes are standalone homes that have everything, as a normal home would have. And then you talked about like the finishes could be, because one of the things that Monroe County is really missing is higher end but small homes.
Yeah,
and so I'm hoping this will kind of fill that niche a little bit.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're custom builders, and so these are not going to be home plans A, B, C, D. Pick one. You get the level of finishes they come with, and that's it. What I see it more along the lines of, I'd like home plan B, and I'd like to explore different cabinet and tile options and trim details, and I mean that's how every project under our roof run, so I don't see these being any different.
So it's not like some building projects in town. It's like here's 4 vinyl floors you can choose from, and here's 6 carpets you can choose from, and anything beyond that,
I've never done a project like that, so I wouldn't even know how to get to that point. I mean, we're just calibrated to build custom projects.
Do you have an idea of timeline? When you're going to start?
Yes. So
you didn't last time we talked.
I didn't, because we're still in the design. I mean, we hadn't even gotten into the design or to the approval process. So
you guys have accomplished a lot this year.
Yeah, but more than I thought we would. And we've broken ground. It's not too far from here. There's excavators working. We're putting in sewer. We've got about half of the sewer lines in, which was a huge accomplishment. The lot is sculpted now. It sort of looks contour wise like it's going to look when it's done, although we have massive piles of topsoil that are staged through this phase, and we're putting in water lines and stormwater, and we should be ready to start putting in foundations in March.
Wow.
April.
But do you need a buyer in order to start putting in a foundation?
I would like some buyers.
Okay. So if you're interested in this, definitely hit up Loren.
We will build some spec homes.
Okay.
At the outset.
Okay.
So we are fully committed to moving the ball forward and getting the, starting to get some established neighborhood feel in there. And I think it's hard to envision a home on an empty spit of land. So starting to see the roads and the paths, and we're building the common house. We pulled the permit for the common house. The cabin's there. It's ready for people to have their family come stay. So we are very much moving forward. And
I know one of the things a lot of co-housing communities do, and this probably would make more sense once it's established. But if there is a home for sale in there, they invite prospective buyers to maybe stay in the common house or in the cabin so that they can spend a night and kind of feel. We always joke about people want to spend a night in a house, maybe not spend it in the house, but you can stay on the property and get a feel for what the neighborhood is like so that, you kind of fully understand all the benefits, I think.
Yeah. Do you have a time frame of, or can you gauge when you guys might hear back about the infrastructure costs? I know that you said
we're still waiting on the short street, and that's the biggest piece.
Right.
So, I just had a meeting this week with the engineer and the architect, and the engineers meeting with the city, and
I just didn't know how long
probably know that
process
just takes
would
time. I've been under the impression it was going to be done this month, but it certainly doesn't look like that now as the month marches forward quickly. So I would say by the time that we're building houses in March, we will know what the infrastructure cost is.
Cool. Do you have any events coming up? I know that during the course of this past year, 2018, that you had some events out there where you would talk to people.
We are scheduling just an information meeting in January. And it's not been scheduled yet, but probably one of the second week of January. I'll probably do it on a Friday afternoon at Inkwell. Downtown, or maybe at the Switchyard Breweries, and got a nice sort of open space. And from there on, we're going to have an information meeting at least once a month. So we're ready to start engaging with the public and building a group.
So follow them on Facebook at the Bloomington Cohousing because you announce all the meetings there.
Yes, right. And we don't have a website that's active right now. We've been waiting till some of these things settle down and we have more specific information. But
less questions, more answers.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Awesome.
So the Facebook's been a good place for us to just keep information coming, but we're really working right now on putting together a website that's more informational.
Awesome. Do you have plans for more co-housing projects in Monroe County coming up?
Let's get through this one.
Okay. Well, let's all help this project be successful because I think it's a really interesting and exciting alternative. We first talked with Loren about the co-housing project as I said, on the Real Estate Today show when we were doing a series on alternative housing options. We talked about tiny home living and homestead living and co-housing living. And I think that this is sort of where things are going in the future, is looking at different kinds of living environments. And this is right for some people.
Yeah, I can't wait to start, seeing houses up there and being able to go drive by and take a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us again. I appreciate it. And we wish you all the luck. We're going to keep an eye on the project and can't wait to, I'm sure there'll be some sort of ribbon cutting open house, something that we'll be able to check out.
And I'm so grateful really for this second opportunity to talk about the project. And, hopefully maybe you'll have me back once we have some homes to talk about. And if nothing else, I'd love to have you guys through. And if you want a tour of the facility, you ladies, I'll take you there. But any of the listeners there too, if you're interested in knowing more, please do just reach out via email or phone or Facebook, and I'd love to talk with you about it. It's an exciting project.
It is.
The location's amazing next to the YMCA and the community garden, the community orchard, and it's awesome. So check it out.
Awesome. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back again with another episode of At Home in Bloomington.
Got a show idea? I'd love to hear it. And be sure to contact me for all your real estate needs and questions too. You can email me at deb@realrealestatetoday.com and follow me on Facebook at Deb Tomorrow Realtor. To contact Karen Rastel for all your mortgage needs, call 812-606-7653 or log on to ruoff.com and go to the Bloomington Center. Thanks to all the Bloomington people who make production of At Home in Bloomington possible. Special thanks to superstar producer Rachel DiGregorio, digital guru Cynthia Hogan at Monster Digital Marketing for website design and hosting, and video genius Wes Lasher in the production house for engineering the show.